Well, I wouldn't say I'm not writing a script for season 5, but I'm still a co-executive producer, and I'm still involved on that level and consult with David and Dan and etc. But it takes me about 3 weeks to a month to write a script, and with all the pressure to finish and deliver The Winds of Winter, I decided my time was better spent finishing the book than taking off 3 weeks to a month to try to get the script done. The TV show has nothing to do with my progress or lack of it. It's its own thing. I don't know. I have days when I make a lot of progress. I have days when I make next to no progress. I have days where I think I'm going backwards because I don't want like what I wrote yesterday. So I've given up making any predictions on that. I'm just writing it, and when it's done, it will be done. Well, that's going to be interesting to find out. I've learned in my rather long career as a writer that when you're on a long project and you introduce some characters at the beginning, and later you come in with additional characters, sometimes there is an audience resistance to the second generation characters, the third generation characters, the characters who arrive on the scene later in the action. People form a very strong attachment to the characters they met initially, and new characters can initially seem like strangers at the feast, and who invited this guy? You always get that sort of reaction. And I've seen that not just with Ice and Fire, but with other projects I've worked on, like Wildcards, which my Wildcard series actually predates Ice and Fire. I started that in 1987. We're working on the 23rd volume of that now. But the most popular characters are still many of the characters who were introduced in Volume 1. Sure. We've had some popular characters who came in later volumes, but they face a bit more of an uphill climb. However, that being said, I think we have some great new characters coming in, and especially in the context of the show, we have some marvelous actors playing them, and that adds an extra dimension that doesn't exist in the books. We've seen last season where we introduced Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper of Dorne, and we had Pedro Pascal playing him, and the world fell in love with this character almost instantly because Pedro brought to the part such immense charisma and power, and he was just great to watch, and from the moment he appeared on screen, the audiences loved him. So hopefully we can get that phenomenon going again. Well, I joined Twitter. I kind of fake joined Twitter as a defensive measure because there were 4 or 5 fake me's on Twitter, even though I wasn't on Twitter. And they were twittering things, and people were taking it seriously. People were thinking it was me. I had a couple incidents relatively recently where legitimate newspapers and online news services picked up something some imposter said on Twitter, and it's being attributed to me, which was annoying, because I would think a journalist for an actual newspaper or online news service would check their sources a little better. So I decided I better have an official Twitter, but I still don't go on it myself. I use my minions, of which I have a number, and I say, I'm going to England. Twitter something about going to England, and they take care of it for me. The blog is still the main thing that I'm doing, and I know, practically speaking, I'm probably going to have to do a similar defensive measure on Facebook too, which is something else that I'm also not on and I've never been on, but there are fake me's on Facebook. So it's the age of the internet. For good or for ill, it's the age we live in, and we need to respond to that. I'm thrilled with people experiencing my stories in any way that they want. I mean, personally, I love actual books, physical books, the old print and paper books. I do have a Kindle. I travel with it. Like I'm here in England right now, and when I crossed the Atlantic, I loaded it up with 100 books, so I had a lot to read on the airplane. But once I'm at home, I put that away, and I go back to reading actual books. And when I'm done, I put it on my shelf, and I keep it there in my ever-expanding library, which I have to keep buying more and more houses because there's so many books. So there are drawbacks to that, but you know, the truth is that what we're doing is telling stories. And the telling of stories goes back to the very dawn of the human race. It used to be a bunch of cavemen sitting around a campfire, and one of the cavemen would say, "Hey, I got a story I can tell you," and everybody would listen. It was all oral. It was all the human voice telling stories. Then it became poetry. We invented poetry. Plays came along. You know, we had the Greeks with their plays, and people would gather to hear stories told in that manner. And you know, in more recent years, we've seen the invention of the novel, which is still only a few centuries old. We've seen pulp magazines. We've seen radio drama come and then go. Movies had a giant heyday. They faded a little when television came in. Movies, television still hanging around. Now we have web series. You know, all of the mechanisms of getting stories out will always change, but ultimately it's still the story that matters, not the mechanism by which the author gets it to the reader. Oh, I'd love to see a number of them adopted to TV and film. I've been working actively to get my historical horror novel, Fever Dream.
Fever Dream is my favorite.
Done. I wrote a screenplay for that. So there does exist a good screenplay that I think that I would love to see, and we've had some big name directors interested in that, but we haven't quite managed to you know, make it all happen. In Hollywood, there's always the hard part of making the deal. It's almost as hard as making the movie. So we've danced around that. Armageddon Rag, my rock and roll novel, in some ways actually launched my career as a screenwriter and television writer. But it's never been made, but there are screenplays that exist for that. That's another possibility. I'm working with HBO to develop some new shows for them. So there are a lot of possibilities out there, and it's always a crapshoot as to which one will come to pass, which one won't. But I'd love to get some more of my work adapted to television and film, especially if I could find another David, another Dan, another HBO, and know that we could do it in the same high quality level that we've managed to achieve on Game of Thrones. I have it on TiVo. I haven't watched it yet. You know, I'm a sensitive soul, so I said, well, I had my wife and various of my friends and minions watch it and say, should I watch this, or, you know, will I not be happy with it? And they've split on it. Some of them said, yeah, I'm going to really enjoy it, I should watch it, and others say, you should probably not watch it. So I don't know, I'll probably watch it someday, because the truth is, I've been a South Park fan for a long, long time, and I've enjoyed what they've done to other people. So in the interest of fairness, I should probably see what kind of take they took on me. Although from all reports, they did get one thing wrong, and you know, there's evidently a whole thing where the South Park me has got this whole thing about weenies.
Yes, that is an element.
And that's they obviously haven't watched the show or read the books, because I'm not a weenies guy. Boobies, they should have gotten boobies instead of weenies. Haven't they learned anything? They know nothing, Trey and Matt. HBO and David and Dan and myself indeed prefer not to speak about the season until it's actually aired. So that's really a question for later, I would think, and for David and Dan to tackle rather than me.